What's up and welcome to the Sabres Edge podcast presented by Nickel City Mafia. I'm your host, Timmy Corks, and this is my co-host, Sammy Saucy Mitts. Sam, what's going on, my man?
Yeah, I'm not sure we agreed on that one, but yeah, sure. It's me, Sammy Saucy Mitts, and not much is going on. I mean, actually, in Sabres news, there's a lot going on. Do you want to open us up with the weekend news we got?
Yeah, man, it's kind of been a busy weekend. We'll kind of work on let me know what's going to be a good nickname for you, though, and we'll kind of go from there. But yeah, no, it's been a busy weekend. I think the first thing that we have to talk about is, hey, Bill, how's it going, man? I think it's the Bills' loss in England. No, I'm just kidding, guys. This is a Sabres podcast. It's going to be...
That's too cruel. The Bills fans have already suffered enough.
But yeah, no, we got some good news, though, on Monday. And that was Rasmus Dahlin. We got him for another 8 more years at $11 million a year. Sam, what are your thoughts on that contract?
I really like it. I don't have any complaints there. I think that it's one of those ones where a lot of people kind of thought it was going to come in lower. That was the initial rumor, was it's going to be like 10-5 for 8 years. And then the story changed, and it was going to be like 10-5, maybe more, but also for a shorter term, because there was that Matthews contract that came out. And was that like 4 or 5 years? I'm not entirely sure the length, but it was a lot of money for not max term. And so people got scared. And I think that I was one of those people. I did not want to see us throw $11 million at Rasmus Dahlin for 4 years. I think that would have really sucked. So the fact that we got the full 8 years, we know that the salary cap's going up. I think that $11 million valuation is good. I'm really happy with that. I think that this past year, he played like an $11 million player. Recently, it seems like he's only been getting better, so I don't see any reason why it should be an issue. I think he's going to play better, and the cap hit's not going to look as bad as the cap goes up. So, what about yourself?
Yeah, I know a lot of fans, they're talking about comparing Dahlin to a lot of the defenseman contracts right now. Erik Karlsson is currently the top paid defenseman in the league right now, which Dahlin, he's currently not at his level. And then he's kind of tied with Drew Doughty right now, which I'm kind of surprised Drew Doughty's making $11 million a year. I guess he's earned it for his past accomplishments, but for right now,
right,
I don't think he's earning that $11 million. But I think the biggest sticking point right now is Cale Makar, because Cale Makar, he's the hot topic when it comes to defensemen in the NHL, which is completely understandable. Makar, he kind of signed a hometown deal. I don't blame Dahlin. He's coming to Buffalo. He hasn't been in the playoffs since he's got drafted by the team. He's kind of got to advocate for himself. And to get that $11 million a year, not only is he advocating for himself, but also the team is, betting on potential. We have a potential Norris Trophy defenseman on this team right now. And he has the potential to be the first Sabres defenseman to get 100 points in this season. So, I think that's totally worth it. And like you said, that 8-year deal is going to be that's important, because I didn't want to see another bridge deal. Austin Matthews, I don't even know what's going on with that contract. I don't know what Maple Leafs are doing. That's crazy. Yeah. I don't know. He's the one that's really messing things up in the NHL right now. But for us, it's nice to know that we have that level of a player right now for the next 8 seasons. So, yeah, let us know in the comments, guys, what you think. I know we have some people talking out there.
It seems like Bill Thornton agrees that he's glad it wasn't a bridge, to your point. So.
Yeah, exactly. I think a bridge could have hurt the Sabres long term. So, yeah. And then, it looks like Tom, he's a regular on Nickel City Mafia for the Bills football. RJ Way street sign giveaway. Have they said, is there a new street name going to be coming down for by Key Center at all? Do you know?
I haven't heard anything about that. I saw the RJ Way street sign giveaway for the home opener was going to be a thing. I haven't heard anything about actually naming a street after RJ, but if they did, that would be awesome, because he means that much to the city where he should probably have one.
Yeah, I think he's been the biggest face of the franchise compared to any player. So definitely RJ deserves it. Tom, let us know if you know more about that. And then, I got to call out Al Podger, Big Al. He's letting us know the Sabres will make the playoffs this year. So we're going to be getting into that.
Yeah.
Later. So we'll be talking about our predictions for the team and then, the division as well. So, yeah, before we get on that.
That answers the question. Tom answers the question that, it's the one street by Labatt House is going to be our way. So
awesome. Thanks, Tom. Yep. And thanks for letting Skinner know about the steam hams. He got that signature done today. So if anybody doesn't know about that, ask Tom about that. Also check out the Buffalo Sabres Reddit as well. But yeah, let's go ahead and get moving forward. I know our next topics are going to be kind of important to kind of what's happened down with the roster. But let's go over the Columbus preseason game. I didn't get to watch too much of it, Sam. What'd you think of the game overall?
Yeah, so I watched the game, and I had said in the last episode that this was the game that I was going to be looking at to really put pressure on UPL to show up and show that he should get a roster spot. And we have Bills fans here saying, I was surprised UPL made the roster, and I agree, because that game, he didn't show up. I think that he went into the game, he let in a few soft goals, he did not give the team a chance to win. And I'm not expecting any of our goalies to do fantastically behind the defense that we put out, because it's just a known thing. We don't really play defense. So that kind of sucks, and it is what it is. So I'm not saying he needed to get a shutout. He needed to show that he could give the team a chance to win, and he didn't.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree. I got to watch some of the highlights, and like you mentioned, our defense is not. I don't know if it's a part of, we were talking. This is the first time that we brought our actual final roster onto the ice these past 2 games. I don't know if it was something with rust, but also if you look back into last season, the team just doesn't play defense under Granato. There were some guys open in front of the net for Columbus scoring. It's hard to be a goaltender. It's hard for UPL if you don't have that support. But like you said, he was also letting in some soft goals that he should have made saves. And if he's not helping out the team in that way either, it's tough to kind of agree with keeping him on the roster right now. But like you said, if the team's not helping you and he's not helping himself, was he given a fair evaluation?
Yep. And to kind of close that out, our issue last year was no defense. We had to score 5 goals. How you have a winning team. It's helpful that we can score those 5 goals, but if we're getting scored on 6 times, it really doesn't feel like it matters. And some nights it's so frustrating because you can see that the offense is just firing on all cylinders, and you still find a way to lose. And those nights, it's not all the goalie's fault. It's sometimes their fault, but it's not all their fault. And so it's hard to play behind this defense.
Exactly. Now, Sam, do you think this is, I know we kind of got in a chat with each other about this, but do you think this is something that deals with coaching philosophy, or is it with the players? What are your thoughts on the team just not flat out not prioritizing defense right now?
I think that it probably comes down to a coaching philosophy. Last year, I think Granato wanted to get a group of young guys to play high event hockey. This does a few things for them. The first is that it gives them a lot of confidence. You see Tage Thompson, he puts up 47 goals. That's now something that he's done. He knows he can do it. Before that, before he started playing for Granato, before he was the first line center 2 years ago, he had 30 points in his career. And he clearly struggled with confidence. He wasn't going out there making spectacular plays, and he just wasn't a complete player, because we all know he also can't play defense. So without the goals, without the defense, you have it just a bad player. But now Granato had them go out for a year and just play offense. And a lot of these guys exploded, having career years, and that'll give a lot of confidence to a very young team. And I think that with that foundation, with that instilled in them, they know they can score. Now it's up to them to transition to, let's now focus on a system that will allow us to keep pucks out of the net. And I think that's what they're doing, or what they said they were going to try to do. This preseason, it hasn't showed that way. I haven't felt like, oh yeah, this is a defensively sound team that can also put up like high numbers. It really just felt disjointed more than anything. That's hopefully something that they can fix with the practices that they've had when was the last game? It was on Friday. So they've had a few days to practice. They'll have a few more. I guess they'll have one more, and then we have games, which is exciting. But I think that the last year it was intentional. I think that they were trying to just have their young players go out there and score as much as they can, and then to be able to say, look, you guys can do it. You can score in at the National Hockey League level. And I think that's a big confidence boost. But then again, if they can't now reel it in and say, we are going to play a defensive system that isn't just run around, then I hope that they can ring it in and just play some defense now and keep the scoring, hopefully.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's kind of weird because we came from a system under Ralph Kruger where defense was the priority. And he saw guys like Skinner and even Thompson, they were kind of just giving up on hockey at that point. They weren't enjoying the game. They're being pushed down to the fourth line. Thompson couldn't even make an NHL roster. He was playing down in AHL. Yeah. And then you have Granato that comes in and he's just letting the guys play. Hey, play your game. And what's everyone's game right now? It's offense. And that's their priority. Score as many goals as possible, play fast, but let's not focus on the defense. And we kind of I was talking to Mike, that's the head of Nickel City Mafia. I was talking to him and I said, I even wonder sometimes, we have all these high draft picks who have high skill and they never prioritized defense in their lives until they're getting into NHL. And you kind of have to have these guys to buy into defense in the NHL at this point, just because you have to play an all-around game here playing up in Buffalo. And that's going to be coming into a factor. We're not going to be winning games in 7-goal fashions anymore. That's just not sustainable for this team. So like you said, I'm hoping in these past couple of practices, Granato was prioritizing defense. But yeah, if anybody in the chat, wants to chime in, let us know what they're thinking. I know Bill, he brought up something that we're going to be talking about a little bit, talking about Bryson, and that's going to be a sticking point on for us. But let's go on to the Penguins game. It was kind of the same story with Columbus. The Sabres once again came out rusty. Every single player, even Dahlin, wasn't even really looking that good out on the ice. And like I was saying, the Penguins have been playing their final roster for the past almost like 4 to 5 games in the preseason. So they were just on top of everything. They knew who was being playing on this team, which is kind of weird that the Sabres didn't have that either, just because they kind of knew who they were going to have on the team, aside from maybe Benson or their seventh or an extra offensive player and their seventh defenseman. Besides that, they knew who was going to make this team. You probably could have held off Eric Johnson on defense to figure out who's going to be your seventh defenseman. So you can really notice the rust on the team. And really, like we were mentioning, and we were talking before the chat, you can go into a little bit. Devin Levi's performance kind of helped UPL to make this roster too. But the other bright spot too was, I think the brightest spot, and I think it's been throughout the preseason, was Benson. Another goal, another assist, 2 points, had a great preseason. And ultimately, as everyone knows, he's made the roster for at least the 9 games coming up. What were your thoughts on the game, Sam?
So yeah, like you said, I think that the Devin Levi letting in 7 goals, I think it was it brought me back around onto the idea of having UPL stick with the team. It showed that even our guy who we thought was going to be the starting goaltender is like, he's mortal behind this defense. He's not gonna be this like stud who's gonna absolutely steal games. I still think he can do that. I still think it's within his capability to steal games for us, but it's not gonna be something that we see every night because we have this porous defense. I actually kind of disagree with you on an earlier point where you had said that you wish that we had played our whole roster for more of the games. Now, when we saw Pittsburgh like 3 games before this most recent Pittsburgh game, they were still playing their whole roster, and so it's easy to look at that and be like, yeah, they've clearly had a lot of time to like gel together and like start clicking with who they're actually playing. I think we just had more players who were potentially going to make the roster.
Yeah.
If you look at our defense, we had Clegg, Bryson, Stillman, and Ryan Johnson had a really good showing. So you've got 4 people who are, or 4 extra defensemen who are like potentially going to make the roster. And then if you look at our like forward side, we had Savoy before he got injured, which is kind of sad that he never got into games. We had Benson, who we didn't really expect would make the lineup right out the gate. So like it's important that we got him a lot of games to like so he could show that it wasn't just one game that he had that was good, but also there were a bunch of AHL guys who we thought would maybe make a better push for it, whether it be our prospects like Kulik and Rosin, or like the more older guys who had maybe been in the system longer, like Rusek, Biro, Murray, Weissbach. So I just think, like, compared to the Penguins, who knew going into the season that they were going to be an older roster, they kind of had their spots already filled out. We had more spots to, like, play for, I think. So I'm glad, like, even though it maybe keeps a little bit of rust on the main roster, I'm glad I got to see Ryan Johnson play, because like now I'm excited for his call up. I know what he's about, and I think that we'll see him sometime soon. And like it was important that I now, like, before the season, I thought Roseanne was going to be a guy who maybe got a shot at the opening lineup, and he was not good enough in the preseason. He didn't separate himself in any way that was meaningful. So like I think that those games were important, even if maybe, I don't know. I do kind of agree that it would be nice to have our team play for a few more games, but again, I still think that we had enough like potential players that would make the roster where I don't mind that we didn't play our full roster for the whole preseason or for the majority of it. So
Yeah, no, that's definitely a good point, because I think we all had Cooley penciled into the roster this year, and look at him now. He's down in the AHL. He really didn't perform in the preseason. I don't know. Did he stick out to you this preseason at all?
No, the guy that I would look to like for Kulik to be usurping would be Olofsson. Kind of a similar like archetype of player. Kulik, he's working on his defensive game. He's working on being stronger on his body and on other players. But his real asset is the one-timer, the shot. He's elite at that. And I think for him coming into this preseason, I wanted to see him show that he can do what Olofsson can do and have like the other aspects of his game more fleshed out than Olofsson. And he didn't really do that. I thought his shot was all right. It's definitely good. Like you can see that it's really good. I don't know if it was like jitters, but there were a few. I think it was in I think it actually was in the first Penguins game, maybe, where he rang a couple off the post. And like I've seen a lot of his highlights. I don't think that's something he does too frequently. He's pretty good with the accuracy generally. And so maybe it was just like the nerves got to him a little bit, but he didn't show well enough in the other aspects of his game for me to look over the fact that he wasn't scoring either. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, and I think you kind of have to look back at Paterka and Quinn too when you look at Kulik and Rosen. You know, both those guys, they played 2 years in the AHL. Specifically Quinn too. You know, he was, when he first came up into the AHL, you know, he was scoring like crazy, putting up points, and then he tried to make the roster on his second year. And Adams told him, "You got to learn how to play defense, man. I mean, if you want to make the NHL roster, you have to learn how to play defense better." And that was the focus on his game his second year. And look at that. After on his third year, he's playing on the Sabres roster on the third line. So, that's very important.
By the way, for Quinn, he was one of the better defensive forwards. He's very good at positioning himself. He's not like the most, he's not going to hit people. He's not really like a bulldozer, but he's intelligent in the way that he positions himself and uses his stick, and he's good at breaking up passes. And so when the analytics came back for his defensive metrics, he's actually positive there, which is rare for this team.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you brought up hitting, which is a sore subject for me, because I'm going to kind of go into a little bit. I think throughout the season is going to be a theme for me, but Owen Power, man, you got to use the body a little bit more. You're 6'6", you're over 200, you're very skilled, but if you want to get guys off the puck and you want to look like you're actually trying on defense sometimes, put your body into some of these guys. Stop stick checking. So that was my one other takeaway as well. The one other thing too is it was nice to see Benson actually producing points on a line with Greenway and Middlestat. So you can show that he doesn't need Skinner and Thompson. You can play with that. And I'm glad Bill's that old school hockey. He's like me, so I agree. Power, I think the next thing with the contract with Power, he's the next guy to focus on. And I'm not expecting him to be like the Sabres wanted Tyler Myers to be when they drafted him, to be, the next Chara. Just use your body a little bit more, man. You're blessed with that. Use it. Right. Stop stick checking. You got to you don't have to be Dahlin. Dahlin has that little bit of a mean streak when he plays defense. You don't have to have that, but just be a little bit more physical.
Yeah. Dahlin's mean streak also got him the most minor penalties in the league last year, I think. So, there's a bit of a double-edged sword there. But,
yeah, exactly.
Our penalty kill wasn't exactly good.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it gets better this year. So.
Yeah. Hopefully he can make it. Hopefully he can keep it physical and aggressive without it crossing the line into the penalties. But yeah, I do agree with you. I think that Power being such a big body, I think that's probably something he'll learn as he stays in the league. That you just kind of sometimes have to hit people. Yeah. He shies away from that a little bit. He shies away from puck battles. I think, from what I've seen from him, I don't think that he's the most aggressive in puck battles in the corner. But yeah, if he does start asserting himself more in that regard, I think that we'll start to see him round more into just a better defensive player.
Yeah. No,
and I think
totally
that'll
agree.
be helpful for his game and for the team in general.
Cool. Yeah, Sam, do you have any other takeaways from the Penguins game at all?
I thought, yes. So on defense, I thought that Eric Johnson, I was pleasantly surprised with him. When he was on the ice, it felt like he really was the steady veteran presence that will be thrown at every defenseman who's 32 years old that any team signs ever. But you really see him back there, and he's not doing anything spectacular, but he's definitely a stable force out there. You don't see too many terrible turnovers, and obviously that was a tough game for everyone. So I'm not going to be too nitpicky, but that was his first preseason game. That he was the only one who hadn't played a preseason game going into that game, and I thought he looked pretty up the game speed. It was pretty good. The one I'm more worried about would be Clifton. He, in the second game, did not show enough for me to be comfortable with him playing top minutes with Dahlin. I think he's just not good enough to be a first pair defenseman. And that's tough for me to say because one, it's preseason and these games don't matter, so that could be part of it. Two, the whole defense wasn't clicking, so that could also be part of it. But also, we just signed this guy. Mm-hmm. It would be fantastic for him to rock out the gate and show that he's every bit worth what we paid him for as long as we did. And both games, I've been left just wanting more from him. And I wouldn't be surprised. I think that the practice lines this week didn't have him playing with Dahlin. I think they moved Samuelson. And we talked about this in the last show as well, where I had put Clifton on the first pairing with Dahlin and said, I am completely willing to move away from that if it's not working and we can find that out quickly. I'm ready to move away from that. I do not want him on the top pair. I think he's just not good enough, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah, and I almost think his contract reflects that he wasn't expected to be a first line defenseman too. You were hoping he would be that for the team, and you never know. Maybe, like we were saying, a lot of defense was out of sync. Maybe he just needs some getting used to the systems still. Bill bringing up, he doesn't feel like a lot of the guys got a lot of practice throughout the preseason, so maybe he still needs to acclimate to the system. But I'm comfortable with him right now playing with power. And then also, I think the bottom line is Yoki Haru and Johnson, which honestly, Yoki Haru needs that. He needs a veteran guy to help him out back there. So, and to have both those guys on the third line, I'm fairly confident that's going to be a strong defensive pair. Before we kind of move on talk about what we thought about the final roster, let's go ahead and take a look at the comments, see if there's anybody talking out there. So, yeah, Bill, if more guys would hit Dahlin and Samuelson wouldn't have to hit as many. I totally agree. We got your top line, your top D line shouldn't have to be the most physical presence on the team, and that's kind of why they brought in Clifton. They're expecting him to be that guy. So hopefully, with power lacking that physicalness, maybe Clifton can bring it in for that D line between the two.
Yeah. I think I would still probably rather see power in Clifton than power in Yoki Haru. I'm not too high on Yoki Haru, so disclaimer there. But I'd be willing to check that out. Maybe like what you said with power's aggressiveness, or with Clifton's aggressiveness and hitting, it could help balance out power.
Cool.
Another comment though, Crosby got a few overdue punches. I thought it was awesome that Peyton Krebs got a fight in the preseason with Crosby. I don't know. I don't know if you saw the fight, but it wasn't much of a fight, and they were laughing about it afterwards. But it was just fun. It's just fun to see.
It was funny too because I don't even think it was Krebs' check that was the one cleaned off the check. But I forgot who the other player was, but I don't think Krebs was the one that should have been deserving of that fight. But hey,
yeah,
like I was saying, it's good to see your captain in preseason. This is a little bit of a Penguins talk. It's good to see your captain sticking up for his teammates in the preseason, especially Letang. Yeah. This is a guy he's been with together. And, you definitely want to see that out of the Sabres. And seeing Krebs, like we said, he's changed his game a lot to stay on this team. And to see him getting into a fight with Crosby, who he mentioned is the one guy he looked up to growing up, it's awesome to see that and see, him changing his game as well. And I think, going around from there, we've got Al Podger, Sabres 3, Rangers 1. All right, we'll be going in our predictions soon. The other thing too, guys, if you're liking the stream right now, definitely hit that like button and subscribe as well. We bring a lot of content besides Sabres content. We have Nickel City Mafia that's going to be talking about the Buffalo Bills. We have our AFC roundtable that talks about all 4 teams in the division with fans from each team, kind of collaborating, as well as we have some other guys. We have some fantasy and we have some golf talk too as well. So definitely subscribe to the channel. Check what we have to offer here. So let's go ahead. Let's talk about the final roster. Tell me, Sam, what did you think of the final roster so far?
Well, first, let me quickly bring this up because we can share it so that everyone can look at this with us. I was shocked by a few of the decisions, honestly. Going into the camp, you don't expect Benson to make it. So that's one. Once you see him playing, once we saw the games play out, I'm not shocked by the result. But, beforehand, if you had asked me if Benson was making the team, the answer would have emphatically been no. He was probably, fourth or fifth on the list of players I would have seen like making the roster who weren't on it before. So it's exciting. We get to see something that was maybe a surprise to a lot of people, and it certainly was to me. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do in possibly a 9-game stint, possibly more.
Yeah,
But
no, definitely. 13th overall pick. I think a lot of people are talking about his size going into the preseason. Do they think he has the NHL body? But, just to see the way that he plays, he's almost the opposite of Power, where he's a shorter guy, but he's going into the corners,
right.
and he's fighting for that puck. So once you saw his game in the preseason, it's not a surprise that he at least gets his 9-game stint. And then, do you think if he kind of keeps this up, do you see him playing that for the team the full season?
Well, you say keep this up. He got 7 points in, was it 6 preseason games? Or maybe it was like 6 and 5. He was over a point per game. Yeah, if he keeps that up, there's no way he's not staying the whole... If through 9 games he has 10 points, you're going to see Benson play more than 9 games. Because you know what? He's defensively responsible. He actually is willing to back check. One of the most impressive plays that I saw from him was during one of the Columbus games where it was a 2-on-1 going against us, and he came back and like managed to get his stick right into position to like break up the pass. And I think that that's impressive to me because you draft someone 13th overall, they're a forward, you expect them to put up points. You expect them to score. You expect them to have like the good vision, the good passing, the good shot. And he did all of that. He got the 7 points. He also he's willing to come back. He's willing to defend. He's willing to get into battles on the boards. He's willing to forecheck aggressively. And those are the small plays that I think that's what earned him the roster spot more so than just putting up points.
Yeah, for sure. And you even see like his hockey smarts too, where even like his off puck plays, like he's getting in the open spots. He's kind of reading things ahead of time to get the puck. He's not lost out there. He knows what he's doing out on the ice, and he's definitely deserved this. And honestly, I think he's going to be on this roster for the full season. I'm going to write that down right now, and I'll eat some crow afterwards if he gets sent down. But I'm saying right now, Benson's playing the full season.
Hey, so, I mean, Jeff Skinner, he did the same thing at 18. He made the roster right off the bat and like played the whole season. And I think actually like they're the most similar players on the roster. I see a lot of Skinner and Benson. I think that Benson's more tenacious and like willing to go into those gritty areas, but they kind of have like, they're not super fast players, but it's undeniable they're great skaters, and they kind of position, like they're smart enough to be able to position themselves for like takeaways in the neutral zone. Skinner, one of his trademarks is just stripping a puck from someone and like turning it up the ice and going for a breakaway. And that's definitely a lot of the style that like how Benson forechecks. He's sneaky. And I think that's like that similarities there. So, we saw Skinner do it in his rookie year at 18. Benson, I think, is the most similar to Skinner on this roster.
Yeah.
Maybe it happens. Maybe it does.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, that's kind of. I don't think there was really any other surprises on the forwards, at least. Would you agree with that? Yeah. So we'll go ahead. We'll move on defense because there's definitely one topic right now that's going on in the chat. I know Bill's not a big fan of, and that's Jacob Bryson making the roster. I mean, a player that didn't play a lot of games last season and still had a negative 24 plus minus. So. I don't know. What are you thinking is going on with Bryson and what Kevin Adams is thinking right now?
I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. If you've watched the previous year and you've watched preseason, I don't get it. I don't get it. I cannot justify why Benson stayed here over Stillman. I can probably justify it for Clegg, but it'd be close. It would be real close. And I think that I understand why you'd send Ryan Johnson down. Yeah. Like, more so just from the perspective of, like, not... Like, regardless of who beat him out, just not wanting him to start in the NHL, give him some time in the AHL, adjust to the like men's game. But over Stillman, I don't get it. I do not get it. It does not make sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're both on the same page. I don't know what is the upside with Bryson with this team right now. Like I mentioned, he was a minus 24 last season. Didn't really play a lot of games, and he was injured towards the end of the season. He is a smaller player. I'm trying to pull up his height and weight right now, but he's ideally not the type of player on defense that the Sabres are kind of looking for, and I don't know what does he bring any offensive skill that you don't already have on defense? I mean, not really. You have Dahlin, you have power to take over that. He's not bringing it's hard to say this. He's not like a Scott Niedermayer type of player where he's an all-around player as well, plays a steady defense, but also can play a little bit of offense. He's not that. His cap hits $1.8 million. They could have easily just got rid of that, waived him, and he's still a young guy, and there was probably going to be a team that would have picked up that contract. I don't get it. I don't think there's any upside to the player at all. Like I said, all right, yeah, thanks, Mike. You mentioned 5'9", 175. I mean, to put that guy on defense, I think the only defensive player that I think about was it Torrey Krug, right? He's around that height as well. I think he's a smaller type of player. So, I mean, I don't know what's going on there. Like you said, you had Stillman. You know what you have in Stillman. He's going to be more of a physical guy, a defensive type of defenseman. I would rather him be as your seventh defenseman. And he doesn't really need time in the AHL. Maybe Bryson, if he would have passed through waivers, he would have been on the AHL team, and he would have got some more time in the AHL to kind of cultivate there. I don't think there's any benefit for him to be a seventh defenseman on a team where he'll probably just be filling in for Eric Johnson every once in a while. So, yeah, definitely a surprise. And I know, Bill was mentioning in the chat too, not a big fan of Bryson. That's one of the head scratchers. And I think he's also mentioning our other take too, going on to the goalies. So teams carrying three goalies, guys. I mean, not what we were expecting, but I think we kind of mentioned in the preseason games with UPL and then Levi that game. I think, like you mentioned, I think Levi's performance and how many goals he gave up kind of saved UPL at this point to be on the active roster. Do you want to dive into a little bit more?
Yeah, I think that Levi was the number one, obviously, and then we weren't sure if it was going to be UPL or Comrie, and I think that Comrie's played better in the preseason.
Yeah.
I watched the Penguins game, and for me, it just, not even necessarily that, it didn't make me necessarily think that what Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen did in the preseason was okay and up to snuff, but more so that we don't have a solid number one goaltender. As much as I would like for it to be Levi, going into the season, I'm not sure about that. And because we don't have that, if we have to rotate a tandem of meh guys, I would be concerned about that. I probably have a higher comfort level running the three guys and hoping that they can just all catch fire at various points of the season than if we, say, sent one of them away and had to rely on two people who were maybe having tough stretches of time. Again, between all of these players, they have one season's worth of NHL games under their belt. None of them have played that many games. And so, I don't know. I think I'm just, more so after the Pittsburgh game, coming around to the idea of it being three goalies, just so that we have more options to lean on if things are getting tough for one or two of the goalies. And again, it makes it easier if we end up having injuries, which is nice. I don't think it's ideal to be carrying the three goalies, and if one of them ends up showing out and being a clear starter, clear number one,
Yeah.
ship the worst guy away. Actually, even if it's Levi, send him the AHL, right? Like, that's actually easier. But I don't think it's going to be Levi. I don't think he's going to be the one who ends up the odd man out once the season starts. He's kind of penciled in as the number one. But I think that, again, until someone really cements that they can take the majority of the starts and take them well, I think that the rotation of goalies is fine. Not too annoyed.
Do you think our starting goalie at the end of the season is on this roster right now?
Oh, that's a great question. I have no idea. I would like it to be. I would like it to be not UPL, Levi.
Yeah.
But again, I think that if Levi starts off slow, we might see a trade. Because so much of our season has been put on the shoulders of Levi that if Levi starts off poorly, I think it's going to kind of ring some alarm bells that if we don't right that ship, that we're maybe going to like throw away the season that people are counting on playoffs for.
Yeah.
So I think the answer to your question depends on how strong Levi starts. And if he doesn't start strong, I think that the solution and our starting goaltender is outside help and not one of the three people that we currently have. Because I'm not expecting Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen or Eric Comrie to really step into that role. But
no, yeah. I kind of leaning towards, I don't think this 3 goalie rotation is going to last more than a month on this team. I think they're going to make a decision who's going to be their second goaltender within that time frame. I also don't think our starting goaltender is going to be on this roster right now. I want to see Levi be successful. I want him to be a great player, but this is his rookie season, and you can't be putting that much pressure on a goalie in his rookie year. I mean, Ryan Miller was absolutely terrible when he was first coming up in the NHL, filling in at times. And then eventually he got his full starting time back in 2005, 2006, and we know how the story goes from there.
Yeah.
Now, who are we training for? Because goalies are like a dime a dozen right now. And Hellebuck just got re-signed by now I'm blanking on the name of the team. Winnipeg. I knew it was with a W. He just got re-signed. I know he was a hot topic during the offseason for the Sabres trading for him, so that's not an option anymore. I'm kind of almost looking at the Bruins right now. I mean, you got Ullmark and you got Swayman. I mean, that's within the division, but you don't want to help out a division foe, but also, like, what are you doing with you can't have both those goaltenders. They're very good, and one can't be a backup goaltender,
Right.
Can you maybe lean on, say, like, hey, guys, you lost a lot of offensive talent. You don't really have centers anymore. We can maybe slot you guys. Maybe we'll give you UPL and maybe one of our forward prospects for Swayman because you're barely using them anyway. So that's kind of like the guy I'm keeping my eye on right now. It's crazy to think about, but they do have Ullmark signed to a long-term deal. And I think Swayman's still kind of on a rookie contract right now. So, yeah. That's kind of my thoughts right now. But, yeah, I know that's the comment I was just looking at.
Mike's yeah, you just answered that.
I was like, I mean, like, UPL definitely has to be on that deal just because they're going to need some sort of prospect at goaltender. And I think the Bruins are definitely any team would accept offensive help. I think, and the Bills, the Sabres definitely have a lot of offensive players right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's. I know I was kind of keeping an eye on the chat right now. If you want to scroll up a little bit, there's been a battle in there.
About Bryson.
Yeah. Go up to Bill. I know he mentioned something about Bryson and his 24 NHL team. Yeah, Bryson can't even get on my NHL 24 starting roster. I mean, I don't know what's going on with this guy. And we got my best friend Jake on here saying that he loves Jacob Bryson. I mean, Jake's not a hockey guy, so
yeah.
I mean, what are you talking about? Jacob Bryson's gritty. There's nothing gritty about him. Thank you, Mike. -24 last season. I guess I don't know if a lot of people watch this know what plus or minus is, but essentially that's saying he's on the ice for a lot more goals against than he is on goals for. And
Yeah.
that's a huge sticking point for our team too. We don't have a lot of guys in the plus. A lot of our team was in the minus, and the few guys that were in the plus were in the low double digits, like teens. I don't think anybody was 20. So that's something that we got to change on the team right now, for sure. So, and having Jacob Bryson on the team is definitely not going to help out with that. So, I'm fine with moving on with him. Maybe they'll throw him in a trade for a goaltender.
I
Who
think
knows?
whatever goalie you're getting in a trade with Jacob Bryson is not going to be fantastic.
Yeah.
But I mean, if he's just a throw-in piece, if a team just needs a defenseman, I guess maybe. I, as a general manager who needed a defenseman, would not be looking at Bryson.
Yeah.
But maybe that's the idea. Maybe we're trying to swindle someone. You get Bryson into a few games, make him look okay, and get like a 6th round pick or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
definitely. So I think we kind of beat up that part of our topics right now. So let's go ahead. We'll kind of talk about our season projection for the team and kind of what our expectations are, how many points we expect the team to get. And afterwards, we'll kind of talk about just the Atlantic Division too, kind of talk about, what teams have made upgrades and stuff like that. So go ahead, Sam. What are your expectations for the Sabres this season?
I'm going to be real with you. My expectation isn't playoffs, and that might just be a coping mechanism. It might just be so I don't get hurt again by this team. But my expectation is improvement, just visible improvement. A team that really feels like they can win competitive games. Last year in some of the more gritty games, it really felt like in some of the more playoff style games, at least kind of in the middle of the season, it felt like they weren't really able to keep up. Towards the end of the season, you saw it in that last stretch when Levi came up. Like, you see the team being able to come out competitively, play that gritty playoff style hockey. They were harder on pucks, they were better on defense, and that was really helpful to the overall performance. It was really helpful for Levi, who just came into the league, and he was able to win some games with them. I think that part of that was a shift in the style that we played as we were really making a push. So if we can play that way consistently through the year, I think that's what I'm expecting. That's what I'm hoping for. If if all of that happens and playoffs don't happen, I'm assuming something has gone terribly wrong. So that's why I'm not saying the expectation is playoffs. We haven't made it in so many years that I'm not just now going to be like, yeah, this is what I expect. I kind of always felt that this year was going to be a good jumping point. So maybe we get the playoffs, maybe we're just improving. But if something goes wrong, if Dahlin goes down for a significant portion of time, if Levi gets hurt for a lot, there's so many things that can go wrong in a season. And if they do go wrong, I'm not going to be oh, this season was a total bust. I kind of always had the next year as the one that I was really looking towards to be this is when we're going to start really establishing our dominance. This is when we're going to have Victor Olofsson's contract's up. You'll be moving out players hopefully Greenway and as much as I love Gergensons and Jost, and you can replace them with the up-and-coming players Rusik can be a bottom 6 guy for you, and you can replace, hopefully by then, Victor Olofsson can be replaced by Kulik, and we can really see these younger pieces fill into the core and make them better and then have more room to grow. That's what I'm really looking towards for when I think we're going to start establishing our dominance. So this year, if stuff happens and if it doesn't work out, it is what it is. What about yourself? Where's your what are you thinking for this season?
Yeah, no, I know where you're coming from, Sam. Just being a Buffalo Sabre, all my life. I mean, you kind of don't hope for the best. You kind of just you're happy just with getting better. But I'm going to be honest with you. The end of the season last year, and in the post game press or the postseason press conferences, they said they're making the playoffs this year. That
Yeah.
is their number one goal. And that should be the goal that's going to be motivating them throughout the season. I know they've been having slow starts for the past 3 seasons. They start off slow, then they get hot, then they die down for a little bit, and then the season starts ending and they start picking it back up again. This is the season where they have to show that they have that continue. They have to continue with that urgency throughout the year. I know it's an 82 game season. I know it's a long season. Every game matters, especially in the Eastern Conference, because this is the toughest division, or this is the toughest conference in hockey. I wouldn't even say the Sabres are playing the toughest division in hockey too, just because you have teams like the Boston Bruins are coming back. You have the Toronto Maple Leafs. You have the Tampa Bay Lightning, who I don't think they're going to make the playoffs this year. They're kind of old. Vasilevsky's injured. We'll talk about that later. But you also have the Florida Panthers. You obviously have the Sabres. You have Montreal Canadiens. Good luck. Detroit Red Wings. Detroit. I was looking at the Detroit Red Wings roster the other day. They're old. For a team that's supposed to be up and coming, they're an old roster. Anyways, but then you also have the Ottawa Senators, and that's who we're being compared to right now. And I do not want to see the Ottawa Senators making the playoffs before the Buffalo Sabres. I'm telling you this right now. If the Ottawa Senators make the playoffs over the Buffalo Sabres, I got a real problem with the team after that. I'm being honest because I have nothing but ill will towards the Ottawa Senators, especially after what Chris Neal did to Chris Drury. No, I'm done with the Senators. I'm not a fan of their fans either. Like, they're stuck up. Buffalo fans were wholesome. So guess what, Sabres? If anything, do not let the Senators beat you to the playoffs. So I'm telling you right now, the Sabres ended the season last year with 91 points to make the wild card. The Florida Panthers had 92 points. And just to make the playoffs and come in third place in the division, the Tampa Bay Lightning had 98 points. So I definitely think the playoffs are very possible for this team. It should be an expectation for this team. But like you mentioned, there's a lot of things that go into a long season. Injuries, we saw Thompson out for a little bit last year. We saw Skinner out for a little bit. We saw Tuck out for a little bit last year. That plays a big part, and depth is going to be the biggest part to this roster right now. Thank God we have a lot of, prospects and a lot of guys in the AHL that can come up and fill in forward. When it comes to defense, Ryan Johnson looked good, and we have Stillman as well. That's kind of a little bit plus. We have a little bit more depth on defense than we did last year. And I think goalie really is the biggest question mark. What's going to happen after that? We don't have a solid starter right now. So those are the biggest thing. But like I said, Sabres are making the playoffs. I don't care what anybody says. I know there shouldn't be any excuses anymore. Everyone said after the postseason press conferences, the team's focused on making the playoffs this year. They're going to have to show it. If they don't do it this year, there has to be a culture change. And I was kind of mentioning this before. Granato, for me, is on the hot seat. This is his year. You have to make the playoffs. If you don't make the playoffs, you're going to have to make a change. I mentioned this. I'm always going to go back to the Blackhawks before their dynasty. They had Denis Savard as their head coach. He brought the team almost onto the brink of playoffs, but he just wasn't that coach. They recognized it. They're not going to take him far. Next year, they bring in Quenneville. They bring in a guy like Marian Hossa too, and they make it to the big game. So, that's kind of what's going to happen. If the team doesn't make the playoffs, Granato's gone. You have to do it. You have to bring someone who's going to put a little bit more emphasis on defense. I know it's crazy to say, but I'm going to put some hot takes on the show today.
I think I've heard that take more than the one I'm about to give, but I think it so heavily depends. If the reason that we don't make the playoffs is like injuries and stuff, like I don't think Granato's on the hot seat at all. I don't think that any of the players that we currently have on our roster perform to the level that they do if they're not playing for Granado. We saw it with Skinner, who just at what, like 31 posted a career high in points.
Yeah.
We saw it with Thompson as he just keeps getting better. We see it with Dahlin. We see it with Middlestat. I don't think that these players play at this level that they're at if you don't have Granado at the coach as the coach. So for me, I think that I don't know, that just it feels like jumping the gun a little bit to then be like, yeah, something happened and we didn't make the playoffs. If it is obvious, like if everyone on the team's just like underperforming for an unknown reason, yeah, like fire the coach. Fire the coach halfway through the season if that's the case.
Yeah.
But if it seems like the players are doing well, they're putting up good numbers, something happens, like or maybe just like Boston has no fall off, which isn't going to happen. Boston will fall off.
Yeah.
Or like Tampa manages to play like fantastically through the Vasilevsky injury, and Florida is more the Stanley Cup finalist rather than the wild card team. Then like it's just one of those things. Some of these things are maybe not outside of. Maybe they're outside of the control of Granado and our team themselves. But yeah, again, if players are just underperforming, yeah, sure, fire the coach. I would be very hesitant, though, if there's just like a bunch of factors to look at a season where we don't make the playoffs and say we get like 95 points and don't make the playoffs. Like, I don't know. I don't think that. I don't look at that. I'm like, we need to fire Granado. Like, he's the one who needs to go. But
yeah, no, and I know what you mean. And I think for me, the biggest thing too is if you don't see defensive improvement on the team, that's going to weigh in heavily too. If we're winning games 7-6 or we're losing games by ridiculous margins with goals against, I mean, that's a coaching philosophy at this point, and you need to get a coach in there who's going to put their foot down and be like, it's great you're playing offense. But to play in the NHL, you have to play defense too. And to make this roster, you have to play defense. And I also think that comes with roster construction too, bringing in some more vets, not relying on guys like maybe Jordan Greenway can prosper under Granado type of stuff. I mean, bringing in guys who have experience in the league who, no, they're not going to be your leading point getters. They're not going to be your leading scorers, but they're going to show these guys how to play an all-around game in the NHL. And I think that's something that the team needs a little bit. So who knows? Like you said, injuries do play a big factor. If you're losing your big three, one of your big three for the majority of the season, then yeah, obviously that's something you can't overcome. So I completely agree, but I really do think, it soup to nuts, if the team's healthy for the majority of the season and they don't make the playoffs, someone's going to have to pay. I don't think it's going to be Kevin Adams. It's always going to come down to the coaching. If it's not Granado, then it's the bench coaches. The bench coaches need to change. Something has to happen on this team. So, no, I see where you're coming from. But I know there's some takes going on in the chat, so let's go ahead and take a look at that. Is it sad to say I miss Lindy Ruff? I mean, I liked Lindy, and he's doing great things with the Devils right now. I mean, I don't know if I'm missing Lindy Ruff too much. I mean, he brought the Devils were going to fire Lindy Ruff before last season. Like, he was on the hot seat last year if they didn't make the playoffs. So, I mean, he's a good coach. He's very strict with players. You're almost going to get like a pseudo like Ralph Kruger type of coach out of Lindy Ruff. If you listen to the After the Whistle podcast, you kind of hear the stories of him and Thomas Vanek and how much they weren't fans of each other. And Thomas Vanek was one of our best offensive weapons back in the day. So, yeah, let's see what's going on. Jake Podger, he's thinking we're going to get the ace seed, baby. I mean, I don't really want the team to make the wild card. I think their expectation should be at least getting third place in the league. That's what I'm thinking. Tom, he's saying Tage Thompson, 50 goals. I mean, what do you think of that, Sam? Do you think that's possible for him?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I think before he slowed down with injury, he got to 47 this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the thing with Tage Thompson that really instills confidence in me is that the way he scores doesn't feel like a fluke.
Yeah.
He absolutely just destroys defenders with his moves. His shot is lethal. People kind of started figuring out how to cover him on a power play, and that hurt our power play and Tage Thompson as a whole as the season went on. Or Tage Thompson and our power play as a whole. But I still think that he is just skilled enough, has a good enough shot where he's going to put himself into positions to score frequently, and I think that that's only going to go up as if he can stay fully healthy. Again, last year he probably would have hit 50 if he was healthy. So,
do you think he can hit 100 points on the season?
Sure. Yeah. I'll go with that. Yeah.
I mean, if you play on a line with Tuck and Skinner for the full year and that everyone stays healthy, I think that's totally possible. Now, Tom also mentions he thinks Dahlin gets 30 goals this year. How many goals did Dahlin have last year? He was still in like the teens, right?
The teens, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of goals. I think Dahlin can hit 100 points. The 30 goals mark, that's going to be pretty tough for him. So, kind of wondering about that.
Yeah, and then 15 goals. So,
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's doubling his goal total. Well, I think he's a fantastic defenseman. I'm not sure I see him. Maybe you could convince me like 25, but I'm not sure that I see him hitting
30.
30, yeah.
Yeah. And then Skinner with 40 goals. I think that's totally possible. Skinner to get 40 goals.
Yeah.
I can see Skinner getting up to, mid 80 points along with Tuck. I think that top line really needs to produce this year as long as they're healthy. And like I said, I think the biggest thing with that line too is stay within the plus, man.
Yeah.
And be high on the plus. Like I was looking at the New York Rangers roster and they're having guys at like plus 30, plus high 20. I mean, let's get out of the teens when it comes to plus. I think plus minus for me is like the biggest stat in the world, especially when it comes to Sabres right now.
I'm conflicted on plus minus. I think that it has its place, and it's actually, I think, pretty helpful when comparing people of the same team. I think that looking at the Rangers and being like, their players that have plus like 30 or whatever, and our players are like in the teens, or like our players that are doing well are in like the plus teens.
Yeah.
Is unfair because they as a team just did better. So it's not really apples to apples. I do like it when you're comparing players of the same team. Like you can look at one-on-one that I like is Owen Power compared to his main partner in Henry Yokiharu throughout this year. So Owen Power was a plus 10, and Henry Yokiharu, who was his partner through the majority of the year, was minus 12. So you've got a 22-point discrepancy for defensive partners.
Yeah.
If that's not telling a story, like, I don't know what is. Because to me, that screams that, like, Yokiharu is just completely incompetent.
Mm. I mean, and I think this is Yokiharu's, season to find out what he's going to be. I think he
has to prove it.
It's his last dance. Like you got to break out or you got to get out. So those are the two things with him. Bill Thornton commenting, if the Sabres don't incur the bad stuff, I'll say 94 points in the wild card, maybe third place. I totally agree with that. I mean, they were in the wild card race last year, lost by a point. So, I think wild card is totally possible. how many points it's going to need to get in there, with the drop off with the Boston Bruins that are going to happen. It's going to be interesting to see how many points you're going to need to get into the playoffs this year, especially in the East. Let's see what's going on in the comments too.
Jake wants to know what you're drinking.
Liquid Death, my friend. It's a beautiful seltzer water that is lightly sweetened with agave, and it's lime flavor. So definitely check it out. It's one of my favorite seltzer waters out there. That's pretty much all I drink all the time. So hopefully we get a sponsorship. Well, let's see. All right, and then
if you're seeing this Liquid Death, hit us up.
Yeah, exactly. Come sponsor the pod. All right, and then
we know you love Buffalo sports.
And Jake got mad at my mention of him being a fake Sabres fan, and he's just naming off players right now. So, Jake, I was only kidding. Relax. I know you're a Sabres fan. Do you have any other player projections or expectations at all for this team? Just player specific?
Not particularly. I'm going to say, I'm going to throw it out. I'm going to throw out. Which is probably going to be like a really bad take.
There's no bad takes. Only
there's
ones.
Bad ones. There's ones that don't age well.
All right. Well, let's hear it.
I'm going to say that we have Devin Levi play 50 of our games.
Okay.
So more than the half.
Yeah.
I think Devin Levi's getting like 1A.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that he'll have like a 9-10 save percentage.
Okay. I mean, that's not that bad. I mean,
if he does, I just like to say, if he does that, we're making the playoffs. If he posts 9-10 through 50 games, there's no way we do not make the playoffs. If we then miss the playoffs, then we can fire Granato. Then I'm all
all right, totally agree. That's a deal then. No, I don't think that's a bad take at all, especially with he's obviously the starter for the team. It's depending on what's going to go on with the other two, if they're going to bring in another guy as well. So, but I can see Levi is going to get the majority of the games. I mean, he's going to be the starter. They're going to put his feet in the fire. And we've kind of seen it with him in Northeastern. So, he carried that team on his back, and the expectation right now as a rookie is, hey, come in here, act like it's Northeastern, kind of carry this team on your back, but it also has a lot more skill than your Northeastern team. So we can help you out a little bit, especially on defense, because Northeastern defense wasn't that great either, but we definitely have a lot more offensive skill than the Northeastern too. So yeah, exactly. And cool. Yeah. Mike calling you out, complete 360 from what your take earlier on the show.
Frankly, I'm not even sure what my take earlier on the show was. I know that's bad, but
you're just blacking out on the show. You're just saying things.
I'm just throwing things at the wall. No, but it was probably me being more cautious about Levi and saying something to the effect of I'm not sure. I think that's just more of a cautious thing, where I'm not sure that we should be giving him all of this, but if he earns it, I say throw more at him. For a rookie like that, I think it's a balancing act of trying to figure out how much he can take and how much you can give him before it has an adverse effect. And so if he's playing well and he's earning the lion's share of the game, give it to him. Give it to him. Let him run with the net. Let him solidify himself as a number one goalie for us, and force the other two to in a perfect world, he's forcing the other two to fight for a backup job.
I don't have anything to add to that, so I completely agree with that. Jake's asking you to do math right now. He just wants you to give his record and save percentage. You already gave the save percentage, but
the save percentage would be I said 9-10. I think 50 games. Let's say, I'm gonna give him far too many wins in this. For 50 games, let's say 30, 12, and 8.
Okay.
If you have a 9-10 on this Buffalo Sabres team, within 50 games, I think 30, 12, and 8 feels kind of fair. This is a
No,
high scoring offense. So if you can post decent numbers ahead of or behind that, like yeah, I think you're gonna be a solid team. I think or you're gonna have solid stats. I'm pretty sure Luukkonen has a really good record by like points percentage wise, and we
yeah.
all know he was sub 800 save percentage. So again, I think that you just if you're posting good numbers as a goalie in Buffalo right now, your record is going to be fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of saw it with Lukanen too. He came in the season last year and he started off hot, and then he just kind of died off in February. So, you know, if Levi can continue that throughout the season, that's going to be great for the team. Um, you know, it's a little bit too late for me to do math right now, so I'm not going to be giving any records, Jake. So, all right, and then Mike's coming in. Levi's a cat, young. He had a lot of college experience, is solid in the World Junior Championships. He's got this. Love the 910 save percentage call. All right. Yeah, I totally
Yeah.
agree with that. So I'm looking forward to the season. And like you said, if he, with those last 7 games last year, too, it kind of proved the philosophy with him. If you're going to come in and take over a game, you're going to run with it. We're going to
Yeah.
let you go until, hopefully not until the tires fall off, but like until, it's like, all right, like we've played you too many games. You need to take a break. And plus, you got to see what those other two guys behind him have as well, because you can't be carrying 3 goalies after a month into the season. There's going to have to be a decision made on that. So yeah, let's kind of wrap up the show with kind of going over the division and going over specifically the Atlantic Division and seeing what teams that we were thinking are going to be making the playoffs, and then some of like the key additions to each team too as well, and then we'll kind of like end the show on like what do we expect our Stanley Cup teams to be. I'm kind of throwing that at you, Sam. So
All right, yeah.
Cool.
Well,
so go ahead. Let's get this started.
So first, I'd just like to say, I looked up UPL's record. He was 17, 11, and 4. So that's like a pretty positive record. He had an 892 save percentage. That's bad. That is a bad save percentage. That's just showing you the firepower that this team has in front of you. I think if you post an average save percentage in this league behind this team, you're going to do very well. Anyway, so I'm sorry. You wanted I'm looking for points, position, and then a Stanley Cup winner?
So yeah, we'll just go over the Atlantic Division just because that's going to be most of our competition in the league.
All right.
So we'll just go over each team real quick, kind of go over their key additions, and then we'll just kind of decide if they're going to be a playoff contender, or they're just kind of going to be a team that, I like to call it speed bumps. Like you just kind of roll over them and then you just keep on moving along the way. So we'll start off with probably the team that I see finishing last in our division, the Montreal Canadiens. I mean, I'm trying to think of what their key additions are this season, and I can't really speak of anything too much. Bill, good night. Thanks for joining us. See us next week. I don't know. What do you think of the Montreal Canadiens this season?
They should not be scary to us. I don't think that we're going to really have to worry about them. They are a very young team, and I think that St. Louis is doing a good job coaching them. Kind of a similar philosophy, I think, to what Granato has, where they're trying to coach the offense first.
Yeah.
But I think that there's some good pieces there. I don't think that they're a team that we're going to have to worry about immediately.
Exactly. They're a young team. I really don't see anybody sticking out to me right now. They added Kirby Dach last year, which he's still trying to develop as a player. Slavaski, who is I believe he was the second overall pick, right? Or was he the first?
No, he was the first.
That
was the draft that was supposed to be Shane Wright.
Shane Wright, yeah, that's right. So, he had an okay season last year. I think they're still waiting to develop. I think every year people expect like a first overall pick to be like a Connor Bedard type of player.
Sometimes you get Lafreniere and Slafkovsky. It happens.
Yeah, exactly. So, like I said, I don't really see Montreal Canadiens really causing any trouble for us this year at all. Then we also have the Detroit Red Wings. I was kind of talking about them earlier. they're kind of like a team that's supposed to be almost like an up and comer. They're supposed to be competing with the Sabres last year. Now, I think their biggest addition this season was, I have the old roster, was DeBrincat, right? Is someone that they added.
For Detroit?
Yeah.
Yeah, DeBrincat went to Detroit for Kubalik and some other parts, but
yeah, like he's kind of like their biggest addition. Then you also have Dylan Larkin that's still on the team. And, I think really there's the star on their team is going to be Moritz Seider, who, still coming off with a stellar campaign last year. But looking at like the age of their team and kind of what they're trying to become, they're older than the Sabres. I mean, Giordano is their second defenseman, and he's in his 30s. I mean, they're not really carrying any too much firepower. They're still having their goaltending situation isn't really figured out either. So I don't know. I don't really see them I can see them kind of being a little bit of a thorn on the side for the Sabres, but I can see the Sabres almost winning the series overall in the season. What do you think?
To me, they are the epitome of a bubble team. They're going to compete to the end, and I think they're not going to make it to the playoffs. They're the kind of team that they're going to be a tough game to play against, but if you're going to solidify the fact that we think that we are a playoff team, they're a team that we should be beating. I think that the Iser plan is kind of stalled a little bit. I kind of don't like the phrase Iser plan as well. But I think that they've kind of stalled out a little bit over there, and they're trying to bring in some of the older guys. They bring in DeBrincat. They like you said. Did you say Giordano is on the team now?
He's their.
So they're getting older. They're bringing outside people in, and I think that the drafting and development part for them has not gone spectacularly. Obviously, we lucked into Owen Power. I guess we were bad that year, but now we've got two first overall defensemen. So we have an advantage in that way in having the 2 first overall picks. But I do think that you as Detroit would have hoped to have hit on at least a few more of your guys, and obviously there's still time for some players to bust into the league, but I don't think that. I think they're kind of just going to proceed to be a middling team for at least the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and even the draft this year, I remember watching it, and I don't know too much about the prospects coming. I mean, following NHL prospects, you gotta be crazy. Yeah. There's so many guys to follow, but it sounded like
that's a Chris Baker.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like a lot of commentators were confused by the way that Detroit's been drafting. So, like you mentioned, the Iser plan with Steve Yzerman. I think a lot of people are hoping he can kind of bring what he did for the Lightning. Right. I don't really see that manifesting in the current, and in the near future, it's almost kind of questionable at this point. So, like you said, I see them as a bubble team. I see them being kind of a little bit of a thorn in the side for the Sabres, where maybe the Sabres let their guard down a little bit, and they might lose a game here or there to them. So, so then another team, and the one that I think is going to be competing the most with the Sabres is going to be the Ottawa Senators. You have Claude Giroux that's going to be on there. They just added Vladimir Tarasenko. That's a huge addition to that team. That's more offensive power. And then you got Brady Tkachuk on there as well. They're almost in mirror with the Sabres as terms of roster, but their goalie situation is just a little bit. They don't have a Devin Levi. They don't have that higher ceiling goaltender that the Sabres have right now. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't like their goaltending situation, but I think if you were trying to base it off stability going into this year specifically, they might have a speed. Did they pick up Korpisalo, if I'm not mistaken?
They did, yes, that's correct.
Yeah. I think going into a season, not having seen more than 7 games out of Devin Levi, you'd probably be more comfortable with Korpisalo. Do I think that Levi could outperform Korpisalo? Easily. Do I think that's necessarily going to happen? I don't know. we'll see, right? That's part of the fun of it. We'll get to see. But
Yeah.
yeah, I do think beyond that, for the Senators, they also have much like the Red Wings, kind of focused a little bit more on the like veteran scorer side of it. Like they brought
Yeah.
in Tarasenko, they brought in Giroux,
Yep.
and so like they also have a strong young core. But I think they're going to be more of a problem in the Chikrin was a nice addition as well.
Yeah.
That and
Agree with
he's
that,
young
Blake.
too, actually. So that's a pretty good pickup. They're gonna have to pay him, which is gonna be interesting to see what they do there. But
Mhm.
I think that it'll just be one of those things where they're probably gonna be more of a problem for us like this year and like next year than going in the future. I think that we've built a like better future foundation than them. But
No, yeah, I totally agree. Chitrin, it's going to be interesting. This is going to happen with him because he's kind of almost. He's supposed to be like that next high end D man in the league, like young player.
yeah,
Then he fell off in Arizona, and then he gets traded to the Senators, and he really didn't perform that well for the Senators at the end of the stretch last year. So it's kind of be interesting because, like you mentioned, his contract's going to be up. What are they going to pay him? It's all going to be depending on the season, and it kind of like with oh my god, Chicker, yeah. I mean, they kind of do have a solid defensive core, and then you kind of almost look at Tim Stützle as like or Stützle as their Thompson type of player, where they still have offensive weapons as well. They're pretty young,
Yeah.
so they're almost mirroring the Sabres. So I see that being like a boat race with them within the division. Well, from there we'll move on to Florida Panthers. I mean, that was the team that made it in over the Sabres in the wild card spot. I didn't really see them add too much this offseason. They didn't really change too much.
They were a bit cap strapped, I think. I'm pretty sure. Like they didn't have too much room for wiggle, so.
Yeah. And to start off the season, Ekblad's going to be injured. Montour's injured. So, that's two of your top defensemen that are going to be out for a while. And you're still hoping Bobrovsky is going to be playing at that end of season form that he was last year. And they've had an up and down tenure with him. So it's kind of be interesting. It's like a wait and see with that team. I can honestly see the Florida Panthers not making the playoffs at all, to be totally honest.
Yeah. Looks like how about Spencer Knight? That's one of the comments. Is he going to be playing this year? I think he is.
Yeah, he's up on the roster this year. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. He's had some. I think it was mental issues, hardships, but I think that when he does play, he's a very good goalie.
Mm-hmm.
But they're kind of a explosive offense, not as defensively minded, or at least have been the last few years. So like they're kind of like us in that manner, and I think that can make it hard for a goalie. So I'm not sure whether or not he's going to be strong enough after not really playing much of last year to come in and really like steal games for them the way that you would hope, the way that Bob did in the playoffs. Although, like at the end of the season, there was actually Alex Lyon who played them into the playoffs, and then Bob kind of stole the show once they got there.
Yeah.
So Lyon's no longer on the team.
Nope.
So it's gonna be Bob and Knight, and you're just hoping that they can really keep it together. And I'm not sure that they can. Especially with the defense hurt to start the season. They are going to get shelled in the beginning of the season, I think, at least. I think they're going to have to put up with a lot. And if that ends up, ruining some confidence and carrying over late into the season when maybe you get your defenseman back, I think you can run into some problems with just letting in too many goals for the Panthers.
Oh, yeah. And I totally agree with that. So let's go ahead. Let's keep this thing rolling. The next team I'm kind of looking at is going to be Tampa Bay. I mean, Tampa Bay kind of been like that dynasty for a while. At first they're the team that are making the playoffs, making the Stanley Cup, but could never win. Always a bridesmaid, never the bride. And then, 2020 hits and they go ahead, they win their first Stanley Cup, and they go back to back in 2021. Now, this is an older roster. You still have some solid guys in Victor Hedman. Mikhail Sergachev is going to be still on the team too. That's your young defenseman on there. Braden Point's still on the team. But I think the biggest thing too is they're starting off the season without Vasilevsky. So, you know, do you think this is the window closing for Tampa Bay? What do you think, Sam?
Well, first, I'd just like to throw a question back to you. Are you aware of who their backup goalie is?
It's Brian Elliott, isn't it?
No, it's Jonas Johansson, former Sabre. So, like, there's that. I don't think. Yeah, that's tough for them. That's real tough. Behind that, it's like Tom something. I don't know. He's literally like
Tompkins. Yeah, I see that.
Tompkins,
right
Tompkins,
yeah.
So they actually won their first game that just happened right now.
Yeah.
So they won today with Johansson at net. I'm not sure that that's sustainable for 2, maybe 3 months, which, you know. And yeah, apparently there's been discussion about trading them UPL on WGR. I'm not sure I would do that just on the merit of I don't want to help them. At this point, if their best goaltender is Jonas Johansson, I'm just hoping that it just wheels fall off and they just for petty reasons. It might make sense for us to trade UPL, but oh my gosh, not to them. Whatever they're offering, I'm not taking.
They would have to. I mean, maybe offer Sergachev. I mean, send us your best player.
I don't think you can find a deal that makes sense between the two teams.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have any goalies prospects. I mean, their wells kind of run up as a team. You know, they're not bringing in the prospects like they used to. Like I felt like every single season. You know, even you look at, I think Utica, is it Utica's their AHL affiliate?
I think so.
And they're
maybe Utica's New Jersey.
I forgot. It's somewhere in New York State, anyways. But their team was always competing in the playoffs in the AHL. Then they bring the guys up, and then they're playing on the Lightning, and then the Lightning still have like young guys coming up, and they're performing on offense. And you're sitting there just like, when does this end? Like the Lightning have almost been good since the when they played the Stanley Cup against the Blackhawks. So like they were just consistently a good team. And like you mentioned, first of all, it's a Florida team. They don't really like hockey. I mean, they don't really deserve Stanley Cups. Yeah. I mean,
their fans are into it now for Tampa. After the back-to-back cups, they actually have a fan base. So like
they do. I used to live in Tampa, and I went to a couple of their games. So I mean, they have a good fan base. The Amalie Arena is amazing. You can kind of pull up your boats instead of driving your car. You can just take your boat out there and park it, and then just go ahead and walk into the stadium. So it's definitely a cool experience. Yeah. But I mean, and they do have Canadians that live over in Tampa too. So I played hockey with them as well. Anyways, I'm kind of done with them having a good hockey team. You have the Florida Panthers right now. They're playing pretty good too. It's like, you got enough. Let Buffalo get some. But I do really think their window's closing. I just don't. Vasilevsky's still a young goalie. He's 29 years old, but I mean, he has injury history. You know, Hedman, he's been injured as well. You still have Bogosian on the team. Like,
really?
Yeah,
I thought he was gone.
I thought he was too, but Hockey Reference right now is showing that he's not on the roster. So maybe they haven't updated it.
Maybe they got him back because I don't think he was on the team last year.
No, I don't think so. I thought I saw he got cut this year too, but I don't know. Maybe that someone on the chat will let us know. I'm not going to do that research. But yeah, at the end of the day, I mean, I don't really foresee Tampa Bay. They're going to be a hard battle, that's for sure. I just don't see them making the playoffs. I think this is the team the Sabres take the position from. 1 second.
Also, sorry, Blake comments that the Comets are New Jersey now. So,
all right, that's good to know. And I think,
no, you can go.
Oh no, I was just gonna move on to the next team. So, I think we have two last teams, two of the most hated teams in the division. Yeah. I'll go with Boston. So, We kind of talked about them a little bit. Let me see. I mean, amazing season last year. Amazing
Yeah.
season.
Yeah.
They played a lot of defense. They have a strong defensive team. They lost some guys in free agency, Clifton coming over the Sabres, but I don't think he was a huge part of that team, but he still played a lot as well. But, you lose Bergeron, who's kind of like the heart and soul of that team, but you also lost a lot of centers. I mean, they're talking about it on WGR, Paul Hamilton. You can't really see Boston being very good, productive offensively as much this year, just because they did lose a lot of centermen. And really, you look at their team, and they have some young guys that are coming up that could be making a difference. But Pasternak is still going to be on the team. He's going to be your top points getter. They're not going to be as dominant this year as they were last year. I still definitely see them making the playoffs, but I don't see them finishing top of the division right now. I see them coming in second place. Do you have any thoughts on the team at all?
Yeah, just kind of agreeing with you on the regards to the center depth is tough. That's real tough. I think honestly, kind of depth in general for them is going to start being an issue. You have at center, you have Pavel Zacha, which he's not a first line center. He's not a second line center, which just makes the whole thing kind of hard. If he's your third line center, which he was last year, that's great. That's where you want him. But he's not a first line center. And your second center would be Charlie Coyle, which runs into the same issue. I think you've got two. Sorry, I think you've got two third line centers at this point. And then your third and fourth are Matthew Poultris and Patrick Brown. I've never heard of those guys. I've literally never heard those names before. Yeah. So maybe they're rookies, maybe they're up-and-coming players. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm pretty sure Boston didn't have good rookies or didn't have good prospects. So, anyone who's maybe coming through the pipeline is not the kind of player that's hyped up to be a great player. So I'm just looking at this and I'm like, I don't know. You got pretty decent wingers to flank Zacha. You got Pasternak and Van Riemdijk, and then for Charlie Coyle, you got Marchand and DeBrusque. But honestly, after that, it's still a little flimsy. Your bottom six is just not good. You got Trent Frederick, Milan Lucic, Morgan Geekie, and Jacob Lauko, which I'm looking at that and I'm like, that is not a ideal situation.
I don't know why Milan Lucic still plays in the NHL. I mean, he hasn't been an effective hockey player since he's left the Bruins. I mean, Edmonton brought him over to help out with McDavid, and they kicked him out after 1 year, and he went to Calgary. He's just not a productive player anymore, and I don't understand why they brought him back now. It's almost a move that a team that was, I would say, a move the Sabres would do. Let's say back in 2013, the Sabres, obviously not making the playoffs, but hey, we're going to bring back Danny Briere for his final season just to remember the old days type of thing. So I don't even think Lucic is much of a force anymore. He's just not he used to be able to skate pretty well. He doesn't skate well anymore. He's pretty stiff. Yep. I mean, I don't think really anyone's afraid of Lucic anymore. So, I mean, he's not the guy that he used to be. I think a lot of people remember him for the Miller hit and all the stuff that he did to the Sabres.
Especially here.
Yeah, but he's not that guy anymore, and he hasn't been that guy for years. So, I mean, that's a backward move. But yeah, like Blake was mentioning, you got McAvoy too. He's one of the top defensemen in the league. So they still have a solid defensive team.
Their defense score is good. Just straight up, it's good.
And they probably have, honestly, two of the top 10 goalies in the league between Swayman and Allmark. So yeah, like I said, I really see them being the number 2 team in the league. Matt Cheddar, thanks for hopping on. See Nickel City Mafia a lot too, so thanks for joining us. But yeah, we can. I guess we can kind of go beyond Boston right now. I think we can go to our final nemesis, the Toronto Maple Leafs. I mean, I kind of like what they did this offseason, to be totally honest with you. Really? I know this is crazy for me to say this, but you add Tyler Bertuzzi.
Okay.
You add, and he's a solid player. He has a lot of health issues.
Yeah.
I think the move that I kind of like is the Max Domi move, to be totally honest with you. I know. But I think the one thing the Toronto Maple Leafs are missing, and the reason why they're not doing well in the playoffs, is they're kind of missing that physical presence.
Like Reeves? Like
I mean, yeah, you bring Brian. If you want an enforcer that we're talking about, it's Ryan Reeves. How many games is he giving you? Not a lot. He's a bit of a grocery stick out there. I mean, he's sitting in the bench most of the time, but I think that's something that the team is missing. And I think they bring in Ryan Reeves too, is just as a player that's going to be in the locker room who's going to keep guys accountable. I mean, that's kind of why they brought him in. They have a lot of guys who have egos that they need to feed. Like you have Mitch Marner, you have Austin Matthews, which I don't know. I'm not a big Austin Matthews fan. Like I feel like he's always in for himself. And then you also have Willie Nylander too, who's, he's very in for himself. Like that whole contract dispute he had a couple years ago. I mean, he's a good player, but he's not as good as you think he is. And then you have Tavares, who, I mean, he's a very soft-spoken leader. A lot of people question his competency on the team. So, I mean, I think having a guy like Revo on the team, I'm not a fan of the player. I don't think he's very skilled. Should he be an NHL player? But I think they needed someone in that locker room for that. Their defense really, I mean, I'm not afraid of Morgan Riley is your top defenseman. He's nothing special. I mean, you're rolling with Jake McCabe too. There's no one really sticking out from there. And their goalies are always, I know Ilya Samsonov, he has a high ceiling, but they're still kind of going through that goalie purgatory as almost a majority of the NHL teams are going through. So, I do see them finishing atop of the Atlantic Division, though, but not that wide of a margin. I think it's going to be the Maple Leafs, Bruins, and then Sabres are kind of like my prediction right now for the Atlantic. What are your thoughts?
For the predictions for the division, I actually agree with you, but for the Maple Leafs themselves, I have some
takes.
I've got some gripes. I really do. I thought it was actually pretty funny that when Treliving, is that the GM now?
Yeah, Tree Living or something like that. I don't know how they say it. Yeah, it's something French.
I'll call him Brad.
Yeah.
So when they hire Brad onto the team, like one of his first moves, I think, was picking up Revo. Kind of before they got Domi, before they got Bertuzzi, I think they got Revo. And I'm like, this is embarrassing, honestly. I get that he's a good locker room presence, and he's a tough guy. The Maple Leafs have lacked that grit that they really...
Yeah.
That's something that they've been talking about for years now. Years they've been talking about how the Maple Leafs lack grit. I'm not someone who fully subscribes to grit being something that a team needs. And if they are going to add grit, it better come with skill. That better be a player who can play in the NHL competently without just fighting things. And like Reeves is, I think it was like for players that have played more than 20 games, Reeves was the worst analytics player in the league by a wide margin. They signed that player for 2 years. That's not like 1 year we'll bring him on and he just like hangs around the locker room as a bench warmer. You have him for 2 years. Yeah. Reeves' agent has to be the like smartest guy in the world because there is no way that guy should be getting that contract. And I don't even mind the guy. I think if you brought him in back at like league minimum for 1 year and had with the understanding that he was going to ride the bench the whole year and just be around, fine. You don't give someone who's going to ride the bench the whole year a 2-year contract above league minimum. It just doesn't make sense to me. I thought that was crazy. That really threw me off. I thought that may have been. It's not even like. It's hard to say it's like the biggest overpay because it's literally 2 years at like 1.8 or something. But it feels like the worst contract that I've seen signed this offseason.
No, it's like you said, it's a 2-year deal, which is kind of crazy, especially for a player like him who's been kind of hopping around everywhere towards the end of his career. And I mean, he's not going to be bringing anything onto the ice, production wise. I mean, if you need him to go, tussle with somebody, he'll do that. But there's not many players like him in the NHL anymore. And like I said, I think he's going to be more of like, I know he has a good personality and he's like a rah-rah type of player. And maybe they need that and someone who's going to keep accountability on the team. I almost see like Max Domi kind of being like the key piece of the team. He actually led the Blackhawks last year in points. I mean, I don't mean like a key piece like he's going to be making a huge difference, but to be like a third or fourth line guy who's going to be a little bit more physical. I mean, he's going to bring a little bit. I mean, I think every team needs kind of like that, Sean Avery type of player like Patrick Kaleta was for the Sabres. I mean, I wasn't a Patrick Kaleta fan, to be totally honest with you, but I think it almost like brings fans back to the days of how they used to like hockey. Yeah. I mean, analytics really doesn't agree with it, but I think,
but I think that player can be like Peyton Krebs,
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I don't think Peyton Krebs is necessarily like an enforcer because obviously he's not the scariest guy, but he's willing to stand up for his team and he's willing to throw punches and he's willing to get in these scraps. He's willing to really like hand it back to players who are like giving it to him. And I think that he's also got the upside to be a legitimate NHL like playmaker.
Yeah.
I think the same like Cousins will get in a fight. Cousins will lay out hits. Dahlin, we already know he's kind of got that nasty streak to him. I don't think you need a black hole of a player in Reeves to go out for like 7 minutes a night and collect minuses for you. Like, yeah, sure, he might hit something. He might punch someone and it might be like fun. It might get your team to rah-rah, but like if he can't do more than that, he's not an NHL player. He's a boxer.
Yeah. No, exactly. And like I said, the fact that he's still in the NHL kind of amazes me.
He'll be for 2 more years.
Yeah. And I mean, he's not a productive player. He doesn't really do anything. I mean, if you're a Spittin' Chicklets fan, you see him on the podcast fighting with Biz all the time. I mean, it's just clown stuff at this point. Yeah. I mean, it's cute, man. Like, but I don't know why you would sign him on the first day of free agency. Whatever. Like, you, man. But I'm glad he's not on the Sabres. I mean, and I'm kind of – and the Maple Leafs still have a strong prospect pool too, so they're going to be pulling up some guys if this experiment doesn't work out. But they're kind of in that balance of their window is almost closing, not because of skill – it's more because of your cap is. Yeah,
those contracts are.
Yeah, you're
hefty.
So you're gonna have to be working a lot wrong with that. So let's before we give. I know it's been a long show. Before we give our final predictions for like what both teams for the NHL or for the Stanley Cup, let's just take a quick look at the comments and then anyone in the comments right now, kind of give your predictions for the Stanley Cup too. We'll kind of go over those as well. So let's go ahead and look at those comments, see what's up.
Yeah, so going back to Boston, I see not a lot going on after the first line, to be honest, with saying McAvoy, Pastrnak, Marchand. Like, yeah, I think that their depth is not great. I think that their defense still is going to be really good, though. That's one of the things. Like, Boston, they got the defense.
Yep.
This comment's just Ilya Samsonov. So, the Ilya Samsonov. I don't know. I don't know whether or not you're for or against Ilya Samsonov, Blake, but I think that he's very like. I think when I think of like average goaltender, it's Ilya Samsonov. Like I don't think he's gonna really steal games for you, and I don't think he's gonna be a liability.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. And then what do we have? We have NASCAR. Oh, NASCAR cat car. Oh, okay.
That is a like just like looking at that as like a string of letters is really confusing.
My
I
mind
could do
was
some
melting at this
capitalization
point.
in there to break it up a little bit.
But yeah, thanks for wishing us the best of luck with our team. We wish the best for you for Ducks and Golden Knights fan. I mean, both in the Western Conference, so very interesting. You got one team that's at the top, and you got one team that's on the bottom. So you're kind of right there in the middle. So hopefully, we wish the best for both your teams too, but not too much for the Golden Knights. I mean, you just won, so
yeah. I'm not sure I can wish the Golden Knights any more goodwill. We traded with you guys, and it's been a win-win, honestly, but it still stings a little bit to see Jack Eichel win the cup. I'm not going to get too much into that because then I'll just look salty, but yeah.
No, I know what you mean. I mean, it's tough to see him raising the cup, but then also it's just like, I mean, I can look forward to the Sabres' future. I think we've gotten definitely a lot better, and I think right now at the moment I'd rather have an Alex Tuck over a Jack Eichel. Crazy to say that right now, but I think the morale that he brings to the team is more important than what Jack Eichel was bringing to. So, yeah, that looks good on comments. So, Al Podgers, he said Sabres 3, Rangers 1 for the first game. I think for the Sabres game, at least, it's going to be a little bit more high scoring.
Yeah, I was going to say, you only think we're letting in one? I don't know what Sabres you've watched.
I would go Sabres 6, Rangers 4. I mean, we're going to get a 10-goal game.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's some opening night excitement. I think I got to go with, I'm going to go 4-2 Sabres.
Okay.
We got Blake saying 5-4 Sabres. I'm glad we all agree. Right. The Sabres are winning.
Yeah.
No homer bias, just facts here. We all know that the Sabres are going to win 82-0. So just putting that out there.
Exactly. I mean, your goal should be Sabres undefeated every single year if you're the team. So 82-0.
Yeah.
And
96-0. 96-0.
Oh, 96. That's true. Yeah. And then we got Maddie saying 2-0 Sabres. So we are getting a shutout the first game of the year. Okay. I mean, we were chirping the defense earlier, but hey.
Yeah.
I mean,
if there's any team that Devin Levi is accustomed to facing, it's the New York Rangers.
Yeah.
So this will be within the comfort zone for him.
Exactly. So let's kind of close it out with your Stanley Cup prediction. So what two teams are you thinking are going to make the Stanley Cup?
Yeah, so I'm looking from the East. We're looking at the Devils. I think that kind of similar to us, like super high flying offense. They really broke out last season into just a fantastic point producing team, and I think the helpful thing for them is they've been to the playoffs now. They even won a series, right? They get to the playoffs, they won a series. They go up against a harder, like, defensive team in Carolina, and I think that there's a lot to learn from that. Even though they didn't win, at least I'm pretty sure they didn't win. Now I'm questioning myself. I'm pretty sure they lost, but yeah. So they don't win, but like, that's okay. I think that there's a lot of like learning that could have been done from that. And now that they've done that, they're going to be stronger going into the postseason this year, and I think that they're really going to be making a push. They just have too many weapons not to. And then from the West, I'm going to say, oh, this is hard. I'm not particularly opinionated on too many of the Western teams, but I'm going to go with the Dallas Stars. I think that they've got a good mix of like some really young stars in like in Robertson. Like I think that they got some really good defensemen. I think that their goalie situation is good. I like Ottinger as a goalie. I watched it's 2 years ago now, but that series against the Flames, Ottinger stood on his head, and I don't know. In my mind, Ottinger can do no wrong now. He's just cemented himself as that might just be biased because of the one series, but man, it was impressive when it happened. And then I just I think that they're just solid all around. They got some good veterans too to fill in. Like I think they still have Pavelski, and like he's still producing at a really good clip for very little money, which is helpful for any team to have. So, and then I think between those two, I think I'm gonna give it to the Devils. I think there's just too much firepower on that team for them not to do something spectacular this year.
No, I like both those teams. I'm gonna go with the other team in the East for you. Carolina Hurricanes. They play. I think it's kind of been. I think they're gonna be finishing out the East number one overall. I could even see them winning the President's Cup. I mean, I see them. They're not like a high offensive skill team. They're more focused defensively, but they're still a young team. They still have a solid core. They've always kind of been that team that's I'm almost saying with the Lightning earlier, they're like the bridesmaid, but never the bride. I think this year they're going to become the bride. So that's kind of where I'm seeing like the Hurricanes in the East. And then when it comes to the West, I mean, I've talked about this a little bit. The Western Conference is like a stark polar opposite of the Eastern Conference, where you don't have really too many skilled teams. I mean, I'm surprised that the Golden Knights came out and won the Stanley Cup last year. I mean, maybe I'm going to kind of go with my heart on this. The Edmonton Oilers. I mean,
I like that pick.
I mean, it's almost like, chalk at this point to say both those teams. But you look at Edmonton, they don't really have a solid defense. Their goaltending is still a question. But I think there's going to be a little fire this year with McDavid. I mean, you just watch the guy who got drafted after you win the Stanley Cup before you. And I think that's going to give you a little something to get a little fire on your, to push the team this year. So, I mean, Edmonton just has a solid team overall. But when it comes between the two, I don't think Edmonton's going to beat it over the Hurricanes. I think the Hurricanes just overall such a solid team. And sadly, I think a Southern team that doesn't really have a strong fan base is going to be winning the Stanley Cup this year. Yeah. So
I would love to see it go to Edmonton, honestly.
Yeah, it would be cool.
I think it's just good for the game to have your currently best player win the thing.
Yeah,
he's been at the top of the league for so long now, and it's just been kind of upset after upset for him, and it's kind of tough to see. I'd love to see it go back to a Canadian team that's not in our division. Very importantly, not in our division. Yeah. Any of the other ones, great, perfect, awesome. But I don't really see it being the Flames or the Canucks, the Jets this year. So I would love for Edmonton to really make a real go of it.
No, I agree. And then we'll close it out on Blake Podger's last question. What's your guys' surprise team? Sam?
So you did. I think that if I were to pick a dark horse for winning the cup, this is so hard. It really feels pretty top heavy, and I'd be pretty shocked if it weren't a group of 4 teams that include the Hurricanes and Devils.
Yeah.
But I would say the Avalanche. I think it would be it's not really a dark horse.
I was gonna say that too.
If Vegas wins again, I wouldn't really consider them a dark horse. They just won. Yeah. I think the Avalanche, they're a year removed from the cup, and they looked this last year they looked weaker. They looked weaker as a team, and part of it was they didn't have I think it was Landeskog for the whole year. I don't think they're gonna have him again this year, but I don't know. They have so much talent, and I feel like they kind of got swept under the rug last year because maybe they struggled a little bit. But they made it to the playoffs last year without their captain and one of their best players. I think that it shows that they've got that resilience in them, and maybe they can make a go of it. Just with all of the. Even despite all of the fact that they might not have Landeskog again, they have the experience of playing without him, and hopefully that they'll get some more backup scoring in his place. But I think that they're a good option for a dark horse.
Yeah, I mean, that was the team I was going to pick. I think a lot of people were down on them last season just because, they really didn't perform up to what the standards everyone was going to think they were going to be. You still have Cale Makar, you still have Nathan McKinnon. I mean, you have a solid team overall. I can see them having a bounce back year and kind of surprising everybody. Like you mentioned, Landeskog, I don't know if he's supposed to be out the full season or is he supposed to be out half the season. He's going to be missing a good chunk of the season.
I don't know what happened to him, but I don't know.
I don't know either.
Seemed very severe, so
yeah.
Only wishing him good health, but
exactly.
I don't think he was supposed to play this season.
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
No, I don't know too much about his situation yet. I know he's been out for a while. So, like I said, they're coming out of the Western Conference. I mean, like I said, it's not that strong of a conference at all. So they're definitely going to be making the playoffs this year. But I can really see them making that Stanley Cup push too. They already have the experience. They're still a young team. So yeah, that's kind of why I'm leaning towards the Avalanche right now to be that surprise team, just to remind everybody, hey, like we're still a dominant force in the league. So yeah, did you find anything on Landeskog at all?
Yeah, Landeskog is expected to miss the entire season.
Wow.
And it was a cartilage transplant in his right knee, so that's really tough. Also, he's 30 years old now. Like that's a tough injury at an older age. Like that completely sucks. Hate to see that for Gabe Landeskog.
Yeah, I'm 31, so I know what he's feeling. So, anyways, you know what, guys? Thanks for hanging out with us. We really appreciate you hanging out for the long run. 2 hours long, so it's probably gonna be our longest show. But guess what? Next time we pop on, we're gonna have some NHL games going on. We'll be talking about that. We were supposed to we forgot to do our 3 stars of the preseason. We're not going to do that.
Yeah.
We're going to do that after the first couple of games. So definitely, like we said at the beginning of the show, if you loved our show, definitely subscribe to Nickel City Mafia. Give us a like, comment on the show too. We'll definitely be reaching out and we'll be discussing topics too if you ever comment about anything.
Yeah. And maybe it'll be a topic for the next show too. Like if you comment something.
Exactly. And we're going to be, we're open to taking hints or with help too. So if you guys have any topics that you want us to let us know or want us to talk about, definitely let us know. We'll be happy to talk about that. And for sure, check out Nickel City Mafia too. We're all a family here. We're all supporting each other as well. So saw a lot of the guys in the chat. So thanks for coming out, guys. But yeah, like I said, we got a week from now. We'll be talking some regular season Sabres games. And I don't know, Sam, do you have anything else to say?
Yeah, actually. So next week on Tuesday at 8:30 is the middle of the Tampa Bay Lightning game. So I'm not sure what's going to happen. I think we're still planning on doing it that day, but it's going to be a bit experimental. And if people don't happen to like that format of us doing the podcast in the middle of a game, it might change how we do it in the future with
maybe you'll get some live reaction from us too. So we'll see how it goes. We're testing things out, but like I said, we're just starting off here. So we just want us to be your number one source for Sabres information as well as just Sabres conversation too. This is kind of what I use podcasts for. It's just kind of like generate conversation with other people as well. So no, Sam, it was great talking to you again this week, and we'll see you next week, everybody. Have a good night.
Have a good night, everyone.